Hello and welcome. This is going to be kind of an intuitive message for the upcoming full moon in Cancer with the sun in Capricorn. Most of the full moons are the polar opposite sign to the current sun sign, which is kind of cool and simple to know. It's an easy way to know what is the sign the full moon is going to be in coming up. We'll think about where the sun sign is going to be. Unless you have a blue moon or there's a few other rarer types of moons, it's always in the polar opposite sign. In any case, through some of my own experiences, including the contrasting challenges I've been having with my back and the doctors that I'm going through, which is something that's come up for years that actually I thought that I had already found a way to moderate and cope with and be able to get away from the allopathy industry in general, um, as well as some stuff going on personally. And it actually, I had a couple of visions that made some sense as to what is coming up for this full moon in Cancer. Now, Cancer is the ruler of the fourth house, and it's ruled by the moon. Now, for me, what that means is that when we have a full moon in Cancer, or even a new moon in Cancer, whenever the moon is in Cancer, and it's funny, I'm seeing 12:40 on the clock, which is seven, victory there, and momentum in terms of manifestation. It's also old business, which is like when you're, like, say you're manifesting weight loss and you're changing your diet, but you have moments to where you fall back into your old habits, eating junk food, eating too much sugar, comfort eating, things like that. And a lot of folks get locked up in thinking that, oh, well, this must mean that I'm a failure and that I'm not doing it right and I won't ever be able to lose weight. Or if they lose a bunch of weight, like a bunch of water weight, things like that, and then gain some weight while they're doing exercise, they feel like they're working against themselves when really, no, it's old business, it's old momentum. Abraham Hicks talks about it a fair amount. Tony Robbins has his own way of talking about it, so does Eckhart Tolle. And what it is that energy in motion, it creates a momentum. And so when you're changing a vibration from something you have practiced often, you're still going to see a little bit of old momentum come in. And in those moments is as important after you feel your initial feelings about it is to continue practicing the new vibration of what you want. If that's losing weight, then feeling like you've already lost, you've already got there, and going back to the imaginings of what it will feel like when you have achieved the goal that you want, and thinking about what goal you're going to go for after that, because once you get to that destination it's not done. And you don't, in order to lose weight, you don't just go on a diet once or twice until you hit your goal. You make lifestyle changes. You make dietary changes that match your new lifestyle that you want. That's how you achieve that and you have it be sustainable. Now that we've done that rabbit trail, in terms of the full moon in Cancer, when I see a moon in Cancer, I always consider it exalted, which means it has extra oomph because it's a sign in its, it's a sign in conjunction with its own ruler. And so the full moon in Cancer is an extra oomph going on. It's an extra powerful moon. And Cancer rules the fourth house, which is the house of mother, of home, of family. When I think of it in an actual house, I think of it as the kitchen, which, at least in my experience and what I've seen of a lot of others, is where we often connect the most. You eat dinner together, you make meals together. When you're making meals, you're making them for your family. It's where you find sustenance, and where you think about nutrition, and where you look at the ways that you're feeding your own body and your family's body and your partner's body, things like that. And so these are themes that are coming up. Now, I also just did a crystal ball reading that very much channeled that we're going to be doing inner child work. And then, go figure, of the synchronicities, I started seeing that other readers were also talking about upcoming visions of inner child work. So it makes sense to me that these things are all fitting together. And the fourth house, I hadn't really thought about it before, but the fourth house very much makes sense as being connected with our inner child, especially as our moon signs, which describes how we feel about things, how we experience things from an emotional level, and also is connected to how our mothers raised us, which is kind of interesting. You can often, I used to like to play a game in some astrology groups, which is like, tell me 3 or 4 things about your mother, and I will say what your moon sign is. And actually, even the first time I did it, I was pretty darn accurate. I'm not accurate all the time. A lot of it depends on whether you faced your mother wounds and you're describing only bad things, or you're doing a balance between the contrast and the complement. Though even when you're in one vibration or another, you can still kind of tell what kind of sun sign a person's mother was by the way that they describe their mother, which has to do with their moon sign. And so it makes sense to me that the place that our inner child would most likely be able to be looked at was within our moon sign. And so it doesn't it, to me it's totally complementary that we will be going through these energies of inner child healing and focus with the full moon in Cancer. What I noticed, however, in the collective that I am most aligned with, is that we're going to be going through the challenges of, like, as children and adults, how were you believed and how were you not believed? And how were you challenged when you weren't believed? And, did you grow up with people that told you to act your age when, like, you were acting your age and you were having valid emotional responses to what was going on, though they felt uncomfortable in facing their own shadows and being real with you, or even in telling you that it was valid and understandable that you had that emotional experience. So instead, they told you to grow up or stop crying or stop being a baby, things like that. And I think more for feminines, and this isn't like a twin flame exclusive thing. This is for anybody, all signs, things like that. But for those that identify as feminine, regardless of gender, that it'll more likely be, well, actually, it's funny. It might be somewhat attached to your gender at birth, depending on your experience. Though it's with the notion that our society has been conditioned to believe that women in particular, and those of feminine energy, are just overly emotional about various things. It's almost like when we have an emotional response, even when it's righteous and valid to the experience we're having, people will deflect having to face their own contributions to that emotionalness by just saying, well, you're a woman, you're just being emotional. And so I think as a whole, societally, we're going to be facing that. And then for masculines, and for a fair amount of those who were assigned male at birth, it's the challenge of not being allowed to really have emotions at all. And these are both kind of the same energies, but what we develop female and male egos differently because of the slight contrast in the ways that we're faced with it. Like, women are expected to be emotional, and yet we get in trouble for being overly emotional about things that patriarchally we feel like should be more logical. And men from an early age are expected to never be vulnerable and not to be emotional, and then get in trouble for not expressing emotions, you know? And so then we get into this place where we're emotional breakdown guy or emotional breakdown girl if we have emotions about situations that actually very logically would trigger emotions. And this is oftentimes connected to when we were children. And I also get the sense that there's going to be big energy in terms of, like, if you were raised to believe that, well, life's just not fair and that's the way it is, or this is the way it's always been done and so this is the way we'll continue to do it even if we disagree that this is the way that it should be done. And we're going to be going through times, kind of a continuation of the karmic carnival at the great unraveling, to where we're being faced with, what were we raised to believe, how were we mistreated, how were we gaslit. I mean, to be told to act your age or not act like a baby or don't cry or that you're just too emotional or too stubborn or things like that is a form of gaslighting. It's a form of crazy making and invalidating and deflecting emotions that, even if they were really big and dramatic, should have been respected and treated as valid so that you could work through them and find a healthy, balanced way to approach them. Now, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And I mean, I'm not always right, so I could be wrong on this, though I'm seeing a lot of synchronicities in the collective and what other readers and coaches are talking about. So I will do a few more videos as I see updates coming up to this. If I didn't say it already, this full moon should be, at least for the West Coast, on December 30th, 2020, which is right up next to New Year's. And I mean, how interesting is it that the day before New Year's on the Julian calendar that we are going to have an intense releasing that has to do with the ways that we were gaslit as children and the ways that we were inappropriately taught to think about our emotions and things like that. I think that that's probably a beautiful way to face the new year. So, if you get called to this video and you get the advanced warning of what's coming up, it's a good time now to face that intentionally and to decide what you'd like to release in terms of that old momentum so that you can go into this next new year with this really big Hierophant energy. And on 1/1, a day that a day of initiation, so to speak, because it's related to the Magician card, you can go into that in a whole new way. Have like a beautiful phoenix moment, a beautiful butterfly moment, and see where that takes you. See what kind of contrast you want to choose as the new year comes about. All right, y'all. I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.